In with Hoshea verse 1, chapter 1. And it says, the word of Yahweh that came to Hoshea, the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah, Yotam, Ahaz, and Chizkiyahu, kings of Yehudah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. As we see, by this time, the kingdom of Israel had already divided. Therefore, we see there was a king in Yehudah and a king in Israel. Also, as I always explain, when the Almighty decides to inspire in the prophet or the one who wrote, all those who wrote were prophets in one way or another, but they only call the books of the prophets the those who are Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, Ezekiel, and the other ones. Yet Torah was Moshe, and then the writings like the Psalms, David, which are prophetical. And so I mean, every time that Yahweh, even in the book of Chronicles or wherever in the scriptures, he decides to write names, obviously in the historical sense, is to show us what happened and who was part of the events, as well as the genealogies, in order for us to understand how Yahushua HaMashiach fulfilled the prophecies given in Yeshayahu and other parts of scriptures that he had to come through Yehudah, through David. So that was fulfilled. But then there is one could say deeper, because of the way one can get to that revelation, understanding of what Yahweh is telling us through the names themselves, by getting the definition of each of the names. So in this case, since we see that there are several names mentioned in the first verse, we can then translate each of the names and read those definitions together, and then we get a revelation of what Yahweh is telling us there. It's in a similar way of how we can get also revelation through the connection of the numerical value between words and verses. So in this case, using names instead of numbers. So there are many ways in which we can study scriptures in order to get deeper interpretations, deeper revelations, as in this case we're gonna do with these names. So I'm gonna go to the concordance. And the names are Hoshea, Beeri, Uzziah, Yotam, Ahaz, Chizkiyahu, Yehudah, which was a place, yet Yehudah is the name of the place and the name of the tribe, so it is a name, so I'm gonna include it. Then Jeroboam, then Joash, and Israel. So in that first verse, we see several 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 names, which represents the number 10, celestial perfection. So we have Hoshea, which means salvation, Beeri, which means my well of water, like Be'er Sheva. Beeri is my, because of the yud at the end of Be'er. Be'er is a well of water. Then Uzziah, which means my strength is Yahweh. Yotam, which means Yah is Yotam actually means he is perfect or complete or upright. Achaz means he has grasped or a possessor, possessing. Then Chizkiah means Yahweh has made strong, or whom Yahweh strengthens. Then we have Yahudah, which means the praise of Yahweh, or he who praises Yahweh, or he who is praised. Jeroboam, the people will contend. Then Yoash, given by him, meaning Yahweh. And then Israel, there are many translations given to Israel. One is Elohim prevails, another one contender, or he who contends with Elohim, because that's the name that was given to him when he fought Elohim. Also a soldier of Elohim, a prince of Elohim, or he who will rule as Elohim. So all of those things that I said are connected to the name Israel because of the letters used to make the name. Well, it ends in El, which that's why the mighty one, or Elohim, mentioned many times, but the first three letters are connected with prince, soldier, contender, and other things. So, and also a verb, as in he who will rule, like a prince will rule as king. So as I read all of these meanings, would be the salvation is my well. Yahushua HaMashiach, the water of life, is through whom Yahweh sent salvation for our sins. So the salvation is my well. Whose strength is Yahweh. He is perfect, just like Yahushua HaMashiach completed all the Torah. So he is perfect, because that is pretty much the definition of complete, something which is perfect in Hebrew at least. So the salvation, which is my well, the water of life, is the strength given by Yahweh also, because we can do all things through Yahushua who strengthens us. So he is the strength of Yahweh that Yahweh gives us, and he who Yahweh strengthens. He who is perfect has become the possessor, or he has grasped the strength of Yahweh, because Yahweh made him like himself, because he is the Son. And he will be praised, or through Yahudah he came, but also he deserves praise because of the sacrifice that he was willing to give. And of course he himself said that Yahweh is greater than him. So Yahweh is the one also who tells us in the book of Revelation that Yahushua, because of what he did, deserves that praise. So that that name Yahudah could be seen as the tribe from which the Messiah would appear. That is being mentioned here as the salvation and the strength of Yahweh given to men, and also as he who will receive praise as the Son of Yahweh for eternity, who made others children of Yahweh also through his name, as written in John 1:11 and 12. And also the fact that through him and through his name we give worship to Yahweh. We praise Yahweh through the name Yahushua, because through the name Yahushua, through us saying that we believe what Yahushua did, we are saying that we believe that Yahweh fulfilled already several prophecies. We are saying that we believe that Yahweh resurrected Yahushua. We are saying that we believe that Yahushua came from Yahweh, and many other things that we see in scriptures that are critical, that are very important. So through our belief in Yahushua, we are praising Yahweh because he sent his son, and as it is written, honor the son, pretty much in order to honor Yahweh, because if not, his anger will be destroying like fire. And I'm paraphrasing. If you guys want, I'll get the verse. But the point here is that Yahweh tells us in scriptures that he desired for humanity to give honor to the son, because a parent, when he sees somebody, obviously not anybody who may be dangerous, but somebody being nice to one of his or her children, that person feels good, and all of a sudden starts seeing in a better way that person who is treating their children in a good way. So that's how Yahweh prepared everything. That's why he set apart. So he stayed in heaven, set apart, because he is spirit, he is invisible. So he appeared through his son on earth, so that people would honor his son, so that he would be able to see how people are treating him, because that is a sign of how they would treat him if they could, him, Yahweh. So going back to the point of the names mentioned in the first verse, the salvation which is my well, the water of life, and the strength given by Yahweh, is he who is perfect and who completed the law, who has grasped or has become the possessor of the strength of Yahweh, and who came from Yahudah, who is to receive praise, and through whom we praise Yahweh. Then the people will contend with whom Yahweh has given, or because of whom Yahweh has given. How people contend because they don't accept Yahushua, and they will contend because of what Yahweh will do with the two witnesses. When Yahweh sends the second manifestation, the last, as I have mentioned in many other studies, the people will contend with the two witnesses, and therefore obviously with the witness like Moshe, who is the last manifestation of Yahweh on earth, and therefore this will be fulfilled, because we saw how everything till this point fulfills with Yahushua HaMashiach, his first coming. And now the second coming could be seen from the part that it says the people will contend, or obviously we could also see the whole thing with Yahushua, with the fact that he came from Yahudah, and the people hated him and killed him. So because of the fact that I had said already that he became the possessor of the strength which happened through his sacrifice, is that I mentioned first the interpretation of people will contend with the fact that the two witnesses will appear and the people will hate him, like it says in Revelation 11. So one could see the first and the second coming, but obviously the people hated Mashiach and wanted to kill him, most of the people, and at the end of his ministry, and that's why they killed him. So we could say that obviously that was fulfilled with Mashiach also. And then it says, after the people will contend with him who has been given by Yahweh, but yet Yahweh will prevail. But like I was mentioning, Israel has many meanings, and just like Yitzhak represents the first coming, Jacob, who became Israel, represents the second coming, because he will have to fight the Elohim of this world. That's like I mentioned, the name Israel was given to him when he fought Elohim. So it also could be translated as he who contends with Elohim. So just like the people contend with Mashiach, the true Mashiach, the last will have to contend with the Elohim of this world. So if we see Israel with the story behind it, and with the prophetical aspect of that name and that person and everything that Yahweh showed through his life, then we can see once again what I mentioned as the second interpretation of the people will contend with him whom Yahweh will give. In the second coming, Yahweh is coming as the thief in the night. People will see him as bad, because two reasons: people don't like thieves, and the second reason is in the night, so people won't even see him coming. Therefore, that means that they will have him in front of them and they won't realize who he is. And on the other hand, those who do see him will hate him, just like people hate a thief when they see him. So like a thief in the night, and also like a Gentile, not being a Gentile genetically, but a Gentile to the nations of nowadays who have everything upside down. So they call Jewish to people who live in Israel yet are not Israelites, because they do not come genetically from Israel, at least most of them, while many other people who do come from Israel are seen as Gentiles in the world because of the prophecies of Deuteronomy and the rest of scriptures of how they would be, Israel I mean, scattered among the nations for centuries. And those centuries, with the control of the powers that be over the nations, made it so that those Israelites would forget their identity, because that was their plan of the enemy all along. So that's why, just like people hated Mashiach on the first coming and killed him, now the last must come and fight the Elohim of this world, and that's why people will hate him and kill him, like we see in Revelation 11. So the people will contend with him whom Yahweh has given, like I said, because he comes as a thief in the night, as a Gentile, as a lion. So he comes to bring wrath, not mercy. So people don't like that. They only want mercy. They don't want wrath. They want favor. They don't want knowledge. Really, most of them. I mean, they don't want. They want emotions. They don't want the intellect to grow through understanding, wisdom, and knowledge, and many other things that are necessary, because wisdom and knowledge are more valuable than silver and gold. Yet people want gold and silver when they pray most of the time in the world, I mean. So these names are very I believe revealing of both the first and the second coming. So I'm going to say it once again for the last time. Once for the first interpretation and once for the second interpretation, and then we'll go with the second verse of the book. The salvation is my well, the water of life, who is also the strength given by Yahweh, who is perfect and completed the law, who has grasped, come to possess the strength of Yahweh, as in also he perfected the law and he was sacrificed, and through his sacrifice he grasped the strength given by Yahweh. When Yahweh gave him life, he regained the strength mentioned through the name Hosea, because he is the well of life, the strength of Yahweh, who perfected who is perfect and completed the Torah, the law, who came to grasp through it, completing the Torah, the strength again, so he came to life, he resurrected. After coming through Yahudah and the people contending with him, hating him, killing him, who was given by Yahweh to Israel, to the people, as the prince who would rule as Elohim. That would be the first interpretation. Obviously, all of it has to do with Mashiach. Then the second interpretation would be the salvation comes through my well of life, which gives the strength of Yahweh and perfects and makes perfect, just like Mashiach is perfect. To be able to grasp the strength of Yahweh and praise Yahweh, yet the people will contend with the one he will give, the one he will send as the last, to contend with Elohim, to fight the Elohim of the world, who is the Sar, the prince, who will become the king, Melech HaMelechim, King of Kings. So, and also soldier of Elohim, meaning the one who comes to fight with a bow on a white horse. So, hope that's clear. We can see first and last in the same names. The word of Yahweh that came to Hoshea the son of Beeri in the days of Uzziah, Yotam, Achaz, and Chizkiyahu, kings of Yehudah, and in the days of Jeroboam the son of Joash, king of Israel. When Yahweh began to speak by Hoshea, Yahweh said to Hoshea, there I find interesting how the name is mentioned twice in the very beginning of the verse. Just like I said that the names could be interpreted in two different, as the first and second coming of Yahweh on this earth in the flesh. There in the verse, in the second verse, he first uses the word diver, Yahweh spoke, and then it says Bayomer, which is, and he said. So he uses both verbs, one which has to do with dabar. Yahushua HaMashiach is the word hadabar, and the other one which is amar in Hebrew, which means to say, pretty much. He said amar, and it has to do most of the time with punishment, with saying something regarding punishment, and dabar more, since Yahushua is hadabar, then obviously with mercy, connection, unity, etc. So the fact that he uses both verbs in the very beginning, just like he uses the name Yahweh twice, shows that it has to do with the first and last, both manifestations of Yahweh on this earth. So in Hebrew we can, well, it says, and when he began to speak, Yahweh, and I'm just saying it as the words appear, so that's why it may sound weird. So as he began to speak, Yahweh, with Hoshea, so we see Hoshea, which is connected to Yahushua. Actually, the name Hoshea was the same name that the successor of Moshe had originally. His name was Hoshea when he was born, but Yahweh told Moshe to add a letter to his name, Hoshea, and that's when the name became Yahushua. The name of Hoshea became Yahushua, because all you have to do is add one letter. And Yahweh did that to show us in the future that Yahushua would be the name of Mashiach, the one sent by Yahweh to fulfill what Moshe couldn't fulfill, to bring us to the eternal land, to the promise of eternity. So Yahushua came and fulfilled that. So that name was given through Hoshea, who became Yahushua and then became known as Joshua. So Yahushua was the name given to him when he became the successor of Moshe and brought the people to the promised land, to show us that the name that would bring us to salvation would be Yahushua. Yet that Yahushua, known as Joshua, was a son of Ephraim, a son of Nun, son of Ephraim, son of Joseph, which is the other tribe that Yahweh mentions as the one through whom he would appear on earth. So Yahudah was the one that he used for the first coming. Yahushua HaMashiach came through Yahudah. The last would come through Joseph. We can see that very clear in Genesis 49. So the first and last through Yahudah and Joseph. Now, that Yahushua, known as Joshua, came from Ephraim. So his name represents the first coming. His genealogy represents the last, the second coming. So that is key, because that, just like that, Yahushua ben Nun, son of Nun, represents the first and last in one person, one story. Here we are seeing how Yahweh is doing the same, and he does it a lot, not just here and there, but we are seeing here how Yahweh uses his name twice at the very beginning of the verse. He uses two verbs to pretty much say the same thing. He said, he spoke, but those two verbs connect with the first and last, with mercy and punishment or judgment, because the last not only brings punishment, through judgment will give understanding, through judgment will also give reward, and not him but Yahweh through him, just like Yahweh gives us salvation through Yahushua. So hope all of that is clear so that I can continue. The fact that Hosea is mentioned here is connected with that Hoshea who became Yahushua. So we see how Hosea in this book represents first and last, and therefore the prophecy has to do with the time of the first and the time of the last generation, just like Yahweh himself says in Yeshayahu, Isaiah, that he is the first and he himself would be with the last, meaning the last generation. He would appear once again, as he says in Isaiah. So I'll continue with that verse. Verse 2, when Yahweh began to speak by Hoshea, Yahweh said to Hoshea, "Go, take yourself a wife of harlotry." This is an amazing story, an amazing verse, because of the meaning and what Yahweh was doing there. And there's one thing that I believe perhaps is hard to understand, or most people don't understand because it's hard, I don't know, because of the false doctrines of the world. But we see, just like in the book of Ezekiel and other books, how Yahweh makes the prophet do certain things that according to the law of man were not right at all. But Yahweh, obviously he's not telling us that harlotry is right. He's not telling us the one should do this. He told one man, a prophet, who represented him. So what Yahweh is trying to show us with this story is that Yahweh married a people, Israel, yet those people started acting like a harlot because they started going after silver and gold, the idols, the false Elohim. So they started worshiping demons, fallen angels, evil spirits, and they started connecting with them instead of doing it with Yahweh, just like a wife, instead of making love to her husband goes to have sex with whoever gives her what she wants, because her husband only gives her what she needs. So that is pretty much what is being shown in this chapter. The reason why Yahweh told the prophet is because the prophet needs to experience something so that he may understand firsthand what Yahweh feels and what Yahweh goes through by becoming the creator and the savior and the redeemer and the king. What he has to do, since the prophet has to speak about it, the prophet needs to understand it to a certain extent. So Yahweh makes the prophet experience something so that he may be able to speak with authority. And not only that, so that people may see something and understand it in a personal way. Because if Yahweh were to tell them what they were doing, idolatry and all of that, as he does all the time, they would not understand it, as they don't understand it. So he has to make a visual. He pretty much has to draw the whole thing through the life of Hoshea so that people may understand, because people tend to talk about other people's lives. So they would start speaking about Hosea and how Hosea, the supposed prophet, was now marrying a harlot. How was that possible? That didn't make Hosea a bad person or an evil person or a person that would go to hell, like many people would judge him for it. It made him obedient, because he had to do what Yahweh told him, because he had to suffer through it. Because for a man, although there are certain men who like to marry women who are in that profession, even when they do, it is hard to make the marriage work. And obviously, if the woman does not convert to Yahweh and leaves all sin behind, then there is no way that marriage will work, or that man will be happy, or that woman will be faithful, and many others. That's why this example has to be given, because Yahweh speaks of the false religion of the end times as the harlot of Babylon. I'm seeing some issues with the internet. Then it says, "Go, take yourself a wife of harlotry, and children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry by departing from Yahweh." So Yahweh married Israel in Mount Sinai, and through the Torah, pretty much the marriage contract, they got together, and Israel, said in the paper that she would be faithful, just like Yahweh can only be faithful. They said that they would be faithful. So once Yahweh gave them a home, which was Israel, the land of Israel, the promised land, as a husband does with his wife, they decided to have sex with everybody who was around that home. And I mean spiritually, idolatry, and sometimes also literally. So that's why Yahweh tells Hoshea, in order to show these people what they are doing to me, I gotta show an example through you. So Yahweh tells him to go and do this. And I repeat, this is amazing in many levels, for many reasons, and depending on the mind of the person who may read it, the way he may dare to judge Yahweh or the situation or Hoshea or the scriptures, or get to see that things spiritually are not as they tell us in most religions in the world. So Yahweh himself is telling the prophet this. I'm pretty sure, one could say that Yahweh checked and he saw many people who claimed to be prophets. Many, some had even the gift of prophecy, yet they would not be willing ever to do this. Yet there was one person who happened to have the perfect name. Obviously, Yahweh had knowledge of all of this and he prepared all of it. But that person was Hoshea. And that's why Yahweh comes to him, because he is the only one that would do this. And to certain people in the world, that may be a good thing. I don't know. But obviously, for a man to do this is not a good thing. In many ways, for many reasons. For the heart, for the mind, for the conscience. Even, well, in many ways. So, it's not like Hoshea was very happy to go and do that. Many people in the world may be. I don't know. But somebody who is trying to be spiritual, who is trying to separate himself from all lust and many other things, to be told to do this seems very hard. And therefore, imagine the struggle that Hosea had with himself, with the word given by Yahweh, and also the questions that would rise. Is it Yahweh? Because maybe I don't know. It's an angel. Maybe it's a false spirit or something like that. So that's what most people would tell him. I'm sure, you're crazy. Who knows who you're talking to? So when Yahweh began to speak to Hosea, Yahweh said to Hosea, go take yourself a wife of harlotry. This is very important also, and I know I'm speaking a lot, but it's very important to understand all the details, and this chapter is very short, so the explanation will be needed also for the rest of the book. Look how Yahweh not only said Yahweh twice in this verse at the beginning, but also the two verbs which represent first and last. Also the name Hoshea twice, like first and last, like the Hoshea, successor of Moshe. And is as saying, when Yahweh began to speak by Hoshea, like Yahweh sent his word, Yahushua, first, and then after sending Yahushua and him fulfilling the scriptures through his sacrifice, then Yahweh was able to connect directly with those who believe in him, as in speak by Yahushua, through Yahushua. Then Yahweh said to Hoshea. So then, in the last times, in the end times, the last appears, and now Yahweh, through Yahushua, tells the last, go take yourself a wife of harlotry. I'm saying all of this because, as we know, obviously, because it is not written, Yahushua did not get married. And I'm not saying that the last will marry a harlot, not at all, but my point is that the last comes in the time in which the harlot is controlling the world, and he is born within that doctrine, so he has to come out of that doctrine, because pretty much he was married from birth, like everybody when they are baptized in the Catholic Church, for instance. It's pretty much the best example. So the last, through that experience of the false doctrine, is as the prodigal son, and by being as the prodigal son gets to experience certain things in this world which are not good, because as a prophet has to experience certain things in order to speak with knowledge, with experience, with authority, and many other reasons why. So that's pretty much a representation of the last, when it starts saying what he has to do. Go take yourself a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry by departing from Yahweh. Verse 3. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. In Judaism, there are several interpretations regarding who this woman was. and if she was actually a harlot or somebody connected in certain way to harlotry. Some say that it was actually idolatry, not real harlotry. Some say obviously that it was real harlotry, prostitution. Um, because of the fact that Yahweh says, and get children of harlotry, seems to point to actual sex. Obviously, you can also have spiritual children through teaching idolatry. But as we know, he has children with this woman, and those children get a name which represents what he's going to do with each of the parts in which Israel separated, the north and the south, Israel and Yehudah. So, Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, like I said, some say was a harlot, some say she was just connected in certain way to harlotry, but she herself was not. Some others say that she was connected with idolatry and not with prostitution. But I believe that all can be true. That she was a harlot, spiritually and physically, meaning she had also idols, so that he would experience the whole shebang. So she had idols, and reason why she was in prostitution, because the spiritual leads to the physical also, one way or another. So she had idolatry, prostitution, and therefore was connected to a place and people of harlotry, prostitution. So he went into Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. So let me see those two names, Gomer and Diblaim. Gomer means complete, and yeah, like to come to an end, to cease, to complete doing something, to finish. Gomer. And then Diblaim, two cakes, as in the two parts in which Israel divided, north and south, like I already said. Two cakes, like also the first and last, like Yahushua when he separated the matzah in two, that represents the two manifestations. That is something that is done in Pesach, in which one half is given to be eaten and one half is hidden till the end of the meal. And that represents how Yahweh would appear, as it is written in Daniel 9, as Mashiach Nagid, yet Mashiach would be cut and eaten by the 12 disciples, represented by the matzah that they ate. I mean, believed by those who follow the teachings of the disciples. And the afikomen, the dessert, would be placed for last, which represents the Nagid. So Mashiach would be cut, and then the Nagid would appear in the end as the other part of the matzah. So it's also what we are seeing through what the book is saying. So two cakes. So the name Gomer, to finish the two cakes, or to complete through the two manifestations, to complete the plan of Yahweh through the first and the last, to complete the plan of Yahweh with the north and the south of Israel. That is why Yahweh sent Hoshea to do this, and it would be a representation of that is why Yahweh decided to send first and last, represented by Hoshea, name which was given also to the successor of Moshe, who became Yahushua, confirming the point of what I'm saying. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then Yahweh said to him, call his name Yezreel, for in a little while I will avenge the bloodshed of Yezreel on the house of Yahweh, and bring an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. The house of Yahweh, a king, who made a bloodshed in the place Yezreel. So Yahweh is telling Hoshea to get a wife. He had a son, and Yahweh is telling him name him Yezreel, so that people know that Yahweh is about to fulfill the vengeance for what was done in Jezreel. Jezreel, or Jezreel, let me see how it appears in Hebrew, is a name that is very similar to Israel. Would be Israel. Israel. So like I said, it's very similar to Israel, yet it has a Zayin instead of a Shin, and an Ain. So that is the difference. Israel means Elohim sows, that which Elohim planted. Zerah is seed. Zerah is the root of Israel. So could be seen as the seed of Elohim, but because of the yud at the beginning is pretty much a verb that he is planting, that which Elohim plants. So that would be Yezreel, and it says, call his name Yezreel, for in a little while. And here the reason for naming him that is because of the bloodshed in a place named that. Yet the name itself connects obviously with Yahushua, because he is the root of David. He is the seed of the father. The word of Yahweh is the seed in the parable of the one who sows, as the name Israel. So Yahushua is the one whom Yahweh planted 2,000 years ago, as the name Yezreel means that which Elohim planted. So call his name Yezreel, for in a little while I will avenge the bloodshed of Yezreel, of that which Yahweh planted. Interestingly enough, Yahushua died, and just 40 years later, as in the 40 years around the desert, and many other things that go with 40, the temple was destroyed, and the people who killed Yahushua and rejected Yahushua were scattered. Yahushua being that him whom Yahweh planted. The last is known as the branch. Yahushua is the root, the last is the branch. So call his name that which Yahweh planted. For in a little while I will avenge the bloodshed of Israel on the house of Yahu. On the house of Yahu, like the Yahudim who rejected Yahushua. Yahu, just the first part of the name. Those who are called by the name Yahweh, when Yahweh tells us that we are those who are called by his name, is because we are Yahudim, which starts with Yahu, those who worship Yahweh. So this is the name of a king who did that, but in the sense of the revelation is the reason why I mentioned that. So I will avenge the bloodshed of Yezreel on the house of Yahu, and bring an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel, and bring an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. Yahushua, when he came, he said that he came for the lost sheep of Israel, meaning the lost tribes of Israel. Just like there, the first son, which is connected with Yahushua, because that he is that which Yahweh planted, the word of Yahweh. So the first son is connected with Yahushua, And just a second, I lost the verse. And the fact that it says the house of Yahoo, like the fact that the Yahudim killed him, like it is written in John 1:11, that he came for those who are his, yet those who are his rejected him. And then he was sacrificed for the lost tribes of Israel, as the first part has to do with Israel, and then Yahweh will speak about Yehuda. So let me see if there are questions. It says here, Yahweh asking Hoshea to marry a harlot sounds like he was breaking his own commandment. On the surface level, at least, I keep seeing comments and arguments to discredit Messiah, saying his death is unable to justify us based on literal understanding and eyes of the flesh. But I don't know how you jumped from Hosea to Yahushua, because Hosea is of the Tanakh, Old Testament. So it is in their writings. Yahushua is not said that he came from Hosea, yet he came from Rahab, who was a prostitute who came out of it and accepted Yahushua, or Yahweh, as her savior, because Yahweh saved her and her family through, when Israel entered in Jericho. So I did not understand that connection. Now, not sure also what commandment you're referring to as Hosea breaking, but like I said, has to do with the commandments of men, the interpretation of men which he has of the law. And also another point about that, there's also in Ezekiel, when we get to read Ezekiel, you'll see how there are like 3 different things that Yahweh tells Ezekiel to do that most priests would never do, because they would see it as sin. But that means that they do not understand the actual commandment, because Yahweh would never tell somebody to break his commandments. So that means that we need to get to understand in a deeper way or higher way. So I'll read it again. Yahweh asking Hoshea to marry a harlot sounds like he was breaking his own commandment, on the surface level at least. I keep seeing comments and arguments to discredit Messiah, saying his death is unable to justify us. And but okay, I don't see the connection there. But perhaps that is one question that you have because of what you have been seeing. So if you want, you can write the question different, or say what are their arguments. I mean, because that is not an argument, that is their conclusion. But I would like to see what are their arguments. Somebody wrote an email to me, I don't know when, but I read it today, and I had to answer something similar to that, because I've seen it also. She sent me, or he, it was a she, sent me a screenshot of something a person posted on his Facebook, and I had seen that same argument somewhere else, or that those words spoken by somebody else somewhere, I don't know, on YouTube, something like that. And he was saying something like, whoever shows me a verse that tells me that I have to believe in one Son of Man as a personal savior, or I go to hell forever. Whoever shows me a verse to say that, then I will repent and convert, something like that. And like I was saying, that is a very lazy person, spiritual lazy person, lazy of thought, one who believes that way or would say something like that. And there are a lot of people who use that. It was something like a meme, but obviously regarding this point. So what I mean is that they are sharing it, and they are pretty much saying that they want the whole plan of salvation entirely in one verse. Everything that he said was longer than one verse of scriptures. So he wanted his whole life to make sense through one verse because he doesn't want to read the whole thing and really pay attention and really study it. And then I made a whole list of verses, well, like perhaps 10 verses that together showed that which he was saying, and in a better way, because that which he was saying was a conclusion that he came to because of the fact that they are judging Yahweh and scriptures and the new covenant through what Christians teach. And that is an issue because what Christians teach is not right according to scriptures. So that's why his question was actually wrong. But the verses that I sent, I don't even know if he's going to see him, but it doesn't matter. But the person that sent me the email, at least she's going to understand. So there are several verses to show that, but I repeat, their argument would have to be made also through their interpretation of the scriptures, because some of the verses that I use also, I know how they interpret them. So he says, unable to justify us based on literal understanding and eyes of flesh. The problem here is that even in what you're saying, I keep saying comments and arguments to discredit Messiah, saying his death is unable to justify us. It's not his death or even him. It's our faith in what Yahweh did through him, just like the faith of Abraham justified him. So that is the first thing that brings down that argument, based on literal understanding and eyes of the flesh. Even literal understanding should lead you to Mashiach being Yahushua, just in a simple way. But literal understanding should lead you to know that Yahushua is Mashiach, because it is written literal. Mashiach would come and he would be killed, but not for his own sins, not for himself. Daniel 9:26. Yet people continue to say that Mashiach did not have to die and not for our sins. So if he didn't die for himself, then why did he die? Why would he die? And many other things, I repeat. But yeah, if you want to write something else, then you say, can Hoshea's story be an example to show that the redemption plan of Yahweh can be seen as contradicting without spiritual lens? Okay, that is the connection. Like I said, I believe Yahushua's death can be seen even with literal eyes, but just very carefully. Just looking very carefully, because it is written in scriptures in a very simple way. But scriptures are there are a lot of things that we must learn. This is one of them. So that's why we need to read the whole thing and see how that one thing is found in several parts of scriptures and how they all come together. Now, for those who may not have eyes to see, then perhaps one could say that which you are saying, because those people would not understand what Yahweh was doing through Hoshea if they were not Hoshea. So it's pretty much the same. Those people who do not accept Yahushua is because they do not have understanding of what Yahweh did through him. That's simple. But those people will not come to believe just through that argument, like to telling them that. Actually, they may get offended because they believe that their eyesight is 20/20. So, can Hoshea's story be an example to show that the redemption plan of Yahweh can be seen as contradicting without spiritual lens? Yeah, I guess, and like I said, Ezekiel also. But I do believe that you can actually see in scriptures, reading carefully, even in the literal, that Yahushua had to come. Because scriptures themselves say that there's no one who can fulfill all the Torah. And no one who only does good and never sins. And the scripture, the Torah says that one must fulfill all things to be able to live. Because we know that one's sin is committed, death enters, because the wage of sin is death. So that means that the law was given to condemn, not to justify. Yet in the law we find that to be justified one needs faith, because Abraham was justified through his faith before the Torah was given. So the information, the revelation regarding justification through faith is in the Torah, before the law itself, where it says that everybody is condemned pretty much, because no one is able to fulfill all of it without sinning. That's why there was one who had to come through a virgin, which was prophesied in Genesis 3:15, the seed of the virgin, the seed of the woman, the seed of the woman. So in Isaiah, Yahweh prophesied that a virgin would give birth. That means the seed of the woman he promised to destroy the head of the serpent in Genesis 3:15. So he would be cut, like Daniel said. So many other things to show that he had to die, and we had to believe in him, his death, meaning in Yahweh and what he did through his Yahushua's death. Then he says, there is a verse that says that Mark 16:16, he that believes. Okay, I'm going to continue because we're not in this program, alright? So I'm not going to start answering well in the middle of the book, and I don't think this is connected with the book. There is a verse that says that Mark 16:16, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. In Mark we see that it was written to be understood by anyone who reads. Well, I guess this is as an answer to what you said previously. There is a verse that says that Mark 16:16, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. In Mark we see that it was written to be understood by anyone who reads. Yes, I guess this is part of, it's not a question, but part of what Sally was saying. But regarding that verse, because some people get confused with that too, and some people believe that if one is not baptized, he is damned. Yet there it says, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. So the lack of faith is what brings condemnation. So that, yeah, as answer to the previous part, it doesn't say the lack of works of the law according to the interpretation of men. No, it says according to faith, because faith leads us to do works, the true works of the law, not the works that men decided that people should do. So yeah, and once one believes and confesses Yahushua's Mashiach, one is immersed, baptized in his Ruach, in his name, and therefore becomes saved. But he who does not believe in what Yahweh did through Yahushua is condemned already, and water has nothing to do with it, meaning the baptized of water. So yeah, thank you, Midas. So I'll continue with Hoshea, and it says, call his name Yezreel, for in a little while I will avenge the bloodshed of Yezreel on the house of Yahweh, and bring an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. It shall come to pass in that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Yezreel, meaning the strength in war. That I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Yezreel. Here, verse 5 in Hebrew. Remember that in the end, the last comes as the bow, while Yahushua HaMashiach is the sword. So in a way, this could be seen as the fact that the last would have to die when he would appear as the bow. And where he would die would be as the valley of Yezreel. In Revelation 11, we see that the two witnesses are killed in the same place that their sovereign, Mashiach Yahushua, was killed. So in the same place where Yahushua was planted, the seed of Yahweh was planted, Yisrael, is where the two witnesses will be killed, meaning the bow, the witness like Moshe, will be broken. He who comes to fight for Israel. So in Joshua 17:16 it says, "But the children of Joseph said, the mountain country is not enough for us, and all the Canaanites who dwell in the land of the valley have chariots of iron, both those who are of Beth Shean and its towns, and those who are of the valley of Jezreel." In Judges 6:33 we see where the Midianites and the Amalekites camped in that valley, and Hoshea is the one we're reading right now. And that part when they camped there is when they were fighting Gideon, or Gidon in Hebrew, and Yahweh used him with 300 people to fight a army that could not be counted, and that represents how the last comes. Gideon was a descendant of Joseph, so it represents the last who has to fight the world pretty much through the doctrine, through the teaching, and he will be hated, and he, like, his name was changed also, or he received a title which meant he who fights or contends with Baal, because he represents how the last comes and fights with him whom the whole people worship as a Lord, and Lord in Hebrew is Baal. So Gideon contended with Baal, and that's why he was given the name Yerubbaal. So that represents the last, how the whole world will get against him, and as Midianites and Amalekites who camped to come and fight against him, well, against Israel, in the valley of Jezreel, where we see here that Yahweh is mentioning in this prophecy. "It shall come to pass in that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel." So, like I said, spiritually we can see what we read in Revelation 11, that the two witnesses will be killed in the same place that Yahushua was killed. Then he says, "And she conceived again and bore a daughter. Then Elohim said to him, call her name Lo Ruhama, which means no mercy. Lo is no. Ruhama comes from Rahim, which is mercy. So call her no mercy. For I will no longer have mercy on the house of Israel. Yahushua HaMashiach came to bring mercy, yet they killed him. He was part of the plan for him to offer that mercy, yet the fact that people rejected him is key. Then for 2,000 years, obviously there were some who accepted. They were the apostles. They went and taught the true doctrine, but for 4 centuries the doctrine started to get mixed with lies, and then Catholicism came into Rome became the legal religion, and it was mixed with all types of pagan beliefs, and that made Christianity false, a spiritual harlot. And through the rest of centuries till our time, it kept in the apostasy, like it kept going away from the truth, and therefore Yahweh will send the last to come to bring judgment. And when the 2 witnesses are killed, as I mentioned, represented by the previous verse, then the door of mercy will be shut. So we could see this as the two witnesses being killed, and then no mercy, Lo Ruhama. So call her name Lo Ruhama, for I will no longer have mercy on the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away, like the many who die in 30 days, as we will read eventually in Hosea 5:7. After the two witnesses die, the many will have to die, yet the few, the chosen few, will be harvested in the transformation in the seventh trumpet. So it says, for I will no longer have mercy on the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Yet I will have mercy on the house of Yehudah. That represents, like I said, the many and the few. Israel, who will receive no mercy, the many who will have to die in a period of 30 days. Then he says, yet I will have mercy on the house of Yehudah, meaning the chosen few who will be harvested in the seventh trumpet. Will save them by Yahweh their Elohim. Will save them by Yahweh their Elohim. This is amazing because it is Yahweh speaking. This shows that it was a Malach speaking to Hoshea, or the word himself, Mashiach Yahushua. Yahushua is the word, the last, who is Mikael, who comes as a human at the end, is the voice. That's why in the transformation, Paul says that with the voice of an archangel, the voice of shofar, and that is Mikael, the archangel Mikael, who is the voice of Yahweh, just like Yahushua is the word. So here we see that it is somebody speaking as the messenger of Yahweh. So that shows how the last will appear, will be killed, and then will appear during the harvest to transform or to harvest the wheat, the chosen few, the wheat of Revelation 14, and take them to the set apart place, to the prepared place of Revelation 12. And the fact that it says, yet I will have mercy on the house of Yehudah, will save them by Yahweh their Elohim, is like showing that the last comes as a representation of Yahweh on earth, yet he himself announces that everything that he does is through the will of Yahweh and Yahweh in him. It is Yahweh doing everything, just like Mashiach Yahushua also did. So this verse is very important. It says, yet I will have mercy on the house of Yehudah, will save them by Yahweh their Elohim, and will not save them by bow, not by a literal bow, not with physical weapons, nor by sword, because we know the salvation comes through Yahushua, and the word of Yahweh is the sword. But this is speaking about literal weapons. The last comes as a warrior. It is written that Yahweh is a warrior, a man of war. But it doesn't mean that he will appear as a man and be in an army of the nations and go and kill a bunch of people. Doesn't mean that, like some people in Judaism do believe regarding Messiah ben Yosef. What it means, well, sword and bow is first and last spiritually, whom Yahweh uses to destroy his enemies through their ministry and their deaths as sacrifice. So, and I will not save them by bow, nor by sword or battle, by horses or horsemen. Now, when she had weaned Lo Ruhama, she conceived and bore a son. Then Elohim said, call his name Lo Ami, which means not my people. Lo, no. Am, people. I, mine. So, Lo Ami, they are not my people. That shows how through the first and last, who comes with Eliyahu as the two witnesses, witness like Moshe, the last, and witness like Eliyahu, they give the true doctrine, they are killed, the door of mercy is shut, And therefore, those who do not believe in the true doctrine are not his people, starting from that point when he closes the door of mercy. There, Yahweh will show who are his children, who are his people, and who claim to be his people yet are not, but they are the synagogue of Satan, as Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9 says. So that's why it says here, they are not my people. This shows how Yahweh gives such an importance to names, like we were speaking about in the first verse. He gives such importance to names because the meaning of the name shows prophecy in a few words. So Yahweh is telling the prophet, give her, him, her, well, no, it was a, yeah, the first was a son, then a daughter, and now a son. So a he, a her, and a he, like the fact that he would appear twice as a male for his congregation, which is a woman, spiritually speaking. So starting from the point when the two witnesses are killed, then Yahweh reveals who are his people and who are not, because according to the belief in Yahushua is how that will be set in order for eternity. So it says, call his name Lo Ami, for you are not my people, and I will not be your Elohim. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, as the promise given to Abraham and Jacob. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, meaning the many who will be resurrected and enter the millennium, the 1,000 years, the Shabbat, and then eternity after judgment of the rest of people who lived in history. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. Like the army, in a way, represented by, like I said, like the army that was camping against Israel in the valley of Jezreel. And Yahweh just mentioned that valley and now says that actually it is Israel who will become so large that it will be not possible to measure it or number it. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there it shall be said to them, you are sons of the living Elohim. So that shows how those who are now called Lo Ami, because we are called Gentiles, so we are told you are not his people, you are not an Israelite, like it happened to us because of our sins and being scattered around the earth, thrown within the nations, programmed with false education and false religion in order to believe that we are Lo Ami, that we are not his people. So now through Yahushua, even those who were not his people, if they believe in Yahushua, will be called his people in that time when his kingdom is finally set up completely. So there it shall be said to them, you are sons of the living Elohim. Then the children of Yehudah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together, like the few and the many will finally be one flock. Shall be gathered together and appoint for themselves one head, which will obviously be Mashiach, once first and last have come together, just like Yehudah and Israel, just like represented and prophesied in Ezekiel 37. Then the children of Yehudah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together and appoint for themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land. For great will be the day of Yezreel. Now it mentions this name as the name of a person, which, like I said, because of the meaning, Yahushua is the word of Yahweh, which is the seed which he planted on this earth to make a root for those who believe in him, to be branches But when we read, for instance, Zechariah and Haggai, we read of how Zerubbabel, which means planted in Babel, Zerubbabel is a representation of the last who would come from the nations, like a Gentile according to people, lo ami. So the fact that the last would be born within the nations, that is represented by planted in Babel, the name Babel. So, like I said, in the literal sense, Yahushua became the seed who was killed and buried to give fruit. So he fulfills that, the name Israel. On the other hand, the last will not be buried because he is the branch. Like we see in Revelation 11, he is not buried. Yet he is born, and that is planted. When a person puts a seed in a woman, that is planting. So he is fulfilling the metaphorical sense or the spiritual sense of being planted by Elohim in a different nation like Zerubbabel. And I say all of that because this makes reference to the moment when judgment will fall on the earth because of the death of one person, just like Mashiach died, where Mashiach died, which was represented by the fact that it says, then I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Israel. So then I will kill the last in the place where the first was killed. And now that we read this, for great will be the day of Israel, now is a saying that it is a name of the person who will be killed there, because of the way it's being said. And obviously the day in which Yahushua was killed was great, but since everything that was said had to do with the judgment, with punishment, then we know that it has to do with the end times. So that's why when the last dies, he will fulfill pretty much this part. And that is also interesting because Israel is the name of land and the name of one person. Just like here, Israel is being given for a land, the valley, and used as one person. Just like Yahushua came for the souls of people, and the last comes for the earth and to bring the New Jerusalem down to earth at the last, at the end of the last 1,000 years. So I hope all of that was clear. And now let me go and see questions. I'm gonna give a couple more minutes. I don't know if you guys want me to, since I guess we have some more minutes, if you guys want me to answer certain questions that may not be related, or I don't know, we'll leave it here. But I'll give you a couple more minutes for you guys to write any questions that you guys want, and then I'll come back. We'll figure it out if we close it here. By the way, well, tomorrow, since in our calendar Sukkot starts, I will do a study in Spanish for those who speak Spanish. As you guys know, tomorrow we'll have a study, and we'll continue with Judges. Which plant is the last one? A grape, olive, or which plant would be the last? Which plant would represent it better? Well, like I have said, Yahushua, he said he is the vine. The vine is what represents the tree of life. That's why it gives grapes, which become wine, which represents blood. And actually the wine is called the blood of grapes. So that's why also he gave us his blood. So Yahushua is the vine. The last will be the fig tree, the one that represents the tree of knowledge. But it's also connected with the bush in fire through which Yahweh spoke to Moshe. Yeah, because of the fact that Yahweh spoke to Moshe through the fire in that burning bush, being the last, the consuming fire, and like the prodigal son, that bush had thorns in the leaves. Pretty much, that's what that type of bush was. So the point of that was to show that even if Israel was in the middle of the oven of iron, as it is called in scriptures, Egypt, they wouldn't be burned, even as that burning bush was not being consumed. So the last, even though he's born in a world like Egypt, he gets to be saved through Yahushua and is not burned or condemned through what he lived, pretty much, as the bush. So that's why the connection with Moshe, like I said, and the witness like Moshe, who is the last. Just a second. Now, let's see the other question. Can you explain Corinthians 5:5? Regarding the almond tree, I would say in a way it could be connected to the last, because of the fact that Joseph had a revelation that is connected with the last in a place that was called Almon, Luz, which he called then Bethel. Also because of a prophecy given through an almond branch, because of the one of the names of almond in Hebrew, which sounds like something that is coming very fast, something that will happen in a short period of time. So Yahweh used that branch of almond in order to show that his prophecy will fulfill quickly. And that is how he also speaks about the end times and coming as a thief in the night. A thief pretty much does everything as quickly as possible not to get caught. So in that sense, could be connected, yes. And because of the scepter of Aaron, in a way we could also connect it with Eliyahu, which is the other prophet, just like Moshe and Aaron, like the witness like Moshe and the witness like Eliyahu. Also, Moshe and Aaron can be seen as last and first, for Aaron was the high priest, and Yahushua is the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, while the witness like Moshe is the king, comes as Melech Hagadol. Sounding interesting, the name Yahu, because it sounds like Jew. And this chapter says Yahweh will punish the house of it. Yeah. And yeah, the way I explained it also kind of pointed to that which you just said. Like that being the prophecy being said there. Now let me see. 1 Corinthians 5:5. Deliver such a one person that acts in a certain way to Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that his spirit may be saved in the day of Yahweh, of the sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach. Yeah. That has to do with that can be taken like the many who will have to have their flesh be destroyed and then resurrected because of their belief in the heart. However, their actions within the congregation were not right, so they were not part of the chosen few. So the teacher, the pastor, had to take them out of the congregation, which is what there is being said by Paul in Corinthians, that that person has to be taken out of the congregation so that others in the congregation are not influenced by his wrong actions, his wrong words, his influence, whatever it may be, division or whatever. So that person has to be taken out of the congregation, hoping that his or her belief will end up justifying his or her soul in judgment, because their flesh, because of that sin, would have to be destroyed, meaning they will have to experience death and then appear before the throne, be judged, and Yahweh will decide if they will be saved or not according to their belief. But there are, and well, of course, I would have to read in more context in order to read more explanation. Verse 1, it is actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and such sexual immorality as is not even named among the Gentiles. So it was very bad sexual immorality. That a man has his father's wife, and you are puffed up and have not rather mourned, instead of repenting, instead of mourning for the fact that that was happening within the congregation, they were acting as nothing. That he who has done this deed might be taken away from among you. Puffed up and have not rather mourned, that he who has done this deed might be taken away from among you. For I indeed, as absent in body but present in spirit, have already judged, as though I were present, him who has so done this deed, in the name of our sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach, when you are gathered together, along with my spirit, with the power of our sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach, deliver such a one to Satan for the destruction of the flesh. So put him out of the congregation, even until the point of allowing him to eventually die, meaning destruction of the flesh, that his spirit may be saved in the day of our sovereign Yahushua. Then he continues, but I think that was enough. You see?